After the children first saw the mushroom in the bushes, they were immediately seized with panic, from which they began to scream loudly and tremble, just like the mushroom, which clearly did not expect to be found. After such an outcome of events, all he had to think was that he would simply be destroyed, like all the other inhabitants of the forest, and his mission would fail, which means that he would never be able to return to his former world. But everything turned out as well as possible, because after the children saw the mushroom, they began to run away in a panic and scream for help, telling absolutely everyone that there was a mushroom monster. From what he was, to put it mildly, at a loss, because what he did was incomprehensible even to himself. They were just scared of him, which the system itself even informed him about and recommended opening the attribute panel, to check his level and skills. Frog continued to be surprised and could not understand how he did not even know that he had such a function, and, of course, immediately specified how to use it. Seeing his statistics and skills, he was also not particularly surprised that for the children and all the previous participants, he was a monster of a much higher level, which actually can be seen from the statistics. A smile and a fighting fuse immediately appeared on his face, from which he immediately asked to open the list of skills that he has in order to familiarize himself with them. Identification helps to see the level of opponents, and find out information about them and their skills. And Mushroom Ting Ting is his ability to attack. This made Frog's eyes light up, a smile skyrocketed, and he continued, due to the fact that they are all beginners, this is enough for me to become the dominator of this rookie village. After all this information that Frog received, his happiness knew no bounds. He began to laugh, calmly jump and understand that at first it was just damn difficult to be a mushroom, but not now, when he learned so much new information. He began to imagine that the system deliberately did everything in such a way as to make it as easy as possible to introduce him to the village of beginners. Now he was only interested in where his prey was, because he had already accepted the fact that he was a monster and began to call himself that. Approaching the place where the girl destroyed the blue snail, he noticed people who drove the snails out of the forest, and also stepped on and beat the shells with sticks. Gathering his strength, he decided to once again experience the feeling of a superhero and abruptly jumped out of the bushes, declaring, "I will let you see how great I am." And he immediately used his magical power, which immediately carried a wave of blows and simply destroyed those monsters, so to speak, that humiliated and destroyed the snails. It was very easy, said Frog, for which the system gave him +5 experience points, just like in real games, which he loved to play so much before. The surviving monster, who was leaving somewhere, was simply shocked when he saw that his friends were no more and could not understand what had happened here. Here Frog did not lose his head, and immediately his eyes glowed red, and a demonic smile appeared on his face, which seemed to be just waiting for this moment. From such a picture, the student was simply speechless, his body was in a cold sweat, and, the only thing he could say, "It is not time yet." And immediately, while there were forces, he tried to escape, flying away on a branch from a tree. When he was able to run a little higher, his face was still scared, and he continued to tell himself that the time for monsters had not yet come, and he did not understand how such an advanced monster appeared here. But our Frog was unstoppable. He laughed and asked the schoolboy, "Does he really think that he can run away from him in this way?" And, without waiting for an answer, he immediately jumped, firmly grabbed the branch and tried to get to him, but, unfortunately, he did not succeed, because he had not yet fully learned how to use his body. Frog realized that there are some difficulties in being a monster and decides to let the opponent go for the first time, as there are still plenty of others in the village. And he just starts to retreat without taking any action, but this outcome of events seemed very funny to the schoolboy, and he decided that now, since he is sitting at the top, he will not be reached. And he decides to mock the mushroom, as they used to do it with snails earlier, by throwing a stone at it. It was something that Frog could not have expected in any way. He began to scream in pain. But, this only made him laugh, because he turned to the schoolboy, saying that he is very, very brave, since he so easily ignores the fact that Frog is a monster of a much higher level. And now, after a second, in front of him is no longer one, but a whole army of armed schoolchildren, whom he called in order to catch the mushroom. Frog also noted that the idea is pretty good, but the risks for them are also very big. Jumping up, the ground beneath him shook, and his eyes glowed with a red light, after which he continued, "Which is also not an ordinary monster." Thud. And Frog again uses his mushroom Ting Ting, and flies towards the army of schoolchildren to show them, who is really in charge here. It so happened, that Frog flew into the fattest guy on the team, who was trying to use a shield for protection, built from wooden planks. They managed to break it and the fat man flew back a few meters, but the team decided to take advantage of the moment in which Frog had not yet had time to recover in order to use it to their advantage. They quickly split up on the sides, some to the right, others to the left, and the main schoolboy, who gathered them all here, was left in the middle, from which he did not mind, because he immediately began throwing stones at the mushroom. After the first hit in the body, Frog lost as much as 4% of his health, and this really pissed him off, because it really hurts. And he certainly will not forgive him. But stones now began to fly at him from all sides, from almost every member of the school team. They kept throwing as many rocks at him as they could get. Thus, they wanted to destroy this monster and win the battle. Frog, receiving such damage, was clearly shocked, because he passed every hit with a stone through himself, and his health was constantly taken away. He realized that this is not the right way to fight, because the monster's steps are not so free and obvious, and to face the tactics that are directed against him is not the best solution. Fortunately, this did not last long, and the frog's skills were already restored and you can use them again. Immediately, without thinking, he uses his mushroom Ting and flies at his attackers. But then, out of nowhere, the fat man takes out a piece of his shield, which regenerates sharply, and again tries to stop the blow of the mushroom. At that moment, another student with a sword appears, who asks to hold the monster a little to show him how good he is. To which the schoolchildren report that they left the mushroom just for him, so that he finally gets rid of it. Drawing his sword, he jumps out and strikes, shouting the phrase, "Go die." From which Frog was quite shocked, which is not particularly surprising. The sword cut off part of his cap, the marks from the blows of stones and the sword were everywhere. It was really very difficult for him to resist them. And he decided that he had had enough of such torment, after which he came to the realization that a weak team can use their strengths and tactics in order to defeat stronger opponents together. As he himself did this many times in the game, when he was still in the previous world. And he decided that if he could collect them all in one place and knock them out at the same time, then he would really die. At that time, blows and stones continued to fly at him, and his health was simply taken away. At one point, he starts to vomit and falls to the floor, and his pupils change dramatically. It seems that he still could not cope with his opponents. At that moment, the students ran up to him and began to wonder if they really destroyed him. And after a few seconds, they began to rejoice and jump for happiness, imagining how everyone in the village would be surprised when they found out whom they were able to defeat. But only here the girl could not understand why she still did not receive experience points for the victory. She began to think that all this was probably due to the fact that the difference between their levels was too big and decided to clarify this point with her comrades. At that moment, Frog began to smile heavily and decided to give her the answer himself. All because I pretended to be dead. Ordinary monsters won't be able to understand such advanced tricks. And I finally got you all together. There was hatred in his eyes, and for the last time he tried to implement his plan to destroy his rivals, because he understood that he simply had no more right to make a mistake. With the last of his strength, he again hits his opponents and his level rises, which means that new opportunities are already opening up for him. All of his opponents were destroyed, and the mushroom itself began to shine brightly with white flames that could be seen from every corner of the small village. When he opened his property bar, he saw that all his indicators had now been restored and he was full of strength and energy again, and all the pain from injuries had disappeared. True, his face was already a bit like a human. But, he became a little sad and lonely from the fact that he was still invincible. This victory brought him a lot of joy and self-confidence, because he continued, "I was here to ambush a brave schoolboy to gain experience. What else can you do for me?" After these thoughts, he seriously thought that in the near future, when he left the village, he would be able to calmly fight the main monster without any problems. And then, out of nowhere, rumble, which really scared the fungus. "Shit, I just got hit by thunder, what's wrong with this weather?" Frog thought. And then, misunderstanding again appeared in his eyes, because again 3 unknown people came at him, who began to insult him and told him not to show his weak skills now, because it looks really very terrible. Then a level 18 mage comes closer to him and says, "The mission said that there is a monster messing up the rookie village. It turns out to be a little mushroom monster." The archer interrupts him and says that no matter who he is, just get rid of it and get the bounty. Here another warrior intervenes in the conversation and says that he really misses this, and if it were not for the task with the two elders, he might not have returned to the rookie village. Looking at this whole picture, Frog was simply frightened and at a loss, because three heroes had just appeared in front of him at once, who were several times higher than him in level, and now it is absolutely incomprehensible what they will do with him. They will simply destroy him or take him to your team. At this point, the story pauses and will continue in the next part, so if you were interested, like, subscribe to the channel, and also share your opinion in the comments. It will be very interesting to read. See you in the next video.